Hey guys, I'm going to talk today about another really good book I've read called Extreme Ownership. This is a brilliant masterclass book written by the indomitable, the one and only Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. I mean, I've been listening to Jocko Willink's podcast probably since 2017, 2018. I must have heard him on the Joe Rogan Experience, and ever since I heard that guy, his story, everything about him being on the Navy SEALs, and then later on seeing his TED Talk about extreme ownership, I'll link it down in the comments as well, and listening to his podcast as well. This guy, he's definitely become like almost a kind of leader for me. Before Hamza even as well, before watching Hamza, it was this guy I look up to, and like he's the kind of pinnacle of fucking, divine masculine, if you ever put it that way. This is a real man's man, and this quote, "This book is freedom," I still believe in to this day. But going back to the message of this book, basically, extreme ownership is, if I had to summarize it, a really good and a very practical guide of how to actually become a leader, even if you're not a leader yourself. If you're going to a leadership position, at some point we're all going to be leaders. At some point we're all going to be fathers, we're all going to be mothers, we're all going to be in positions of hierarchy. And we've all known, if you have worked or we're not networking, you will know what it's like to work under a shitty boss. You'll know what it's like to work under who, blames everyone else. You know what it's like someone who puts shit on you and blames you for not doing the right work. You know what it's like to work for a boss who's sort of cowardly and just shouts at the troops when things aren't going his way. And the saying, shit rolls downhill. You know what it's like, if you had a shitty teacher or a shitty lecturer, who blames everyone else and blames you and puts pressure on the whole class, rather than taking extreme ownership. I want to keep flashing this book here because the concept of extreme ownership is basically everything's your fault. When you're in charge of a team and the team doesn't do well, it's your fault. If someone fucks up in the team and they don't do well, it's your fault. If you're in a group project and someone else doesn't do the amount of work that was needed for the project, or they slack off, or they let other people do the work, that's your fault. And that's something I couldn't get to grips with, I remember once, this is way back when I was in Air Cadets, we did like this leadership training thing, and this kind of speaks to what leadership was then. Must have been about 2013, 14. We did a leadership training exercise, where we had like a task or something. You got like this bar of soap in the middle of a rope, and team building exercises and stuff like that. I did this in Air Cadets, and the way I led back then was very what they described as autocratic, and I was basically saying, okay, you do this, you do that, and that wasn't leadership. What I was told was leadership, and this probably speaks into like military leadership as well, especially British military leadership, going back all the way to the First World War. British military leadership hasn't been stellar. Like this is sort of upsetting that dichotomy of what an actual leader is thought to be. Going from the first page, essentially it says you can sort of believe in the dynamic that leaders are just born, but no, everyone can be a good leader. Everyone can be someone who takes ownership of the team. I'm going to bring up some good highlights here, but the sort of main kind of formula of extreme ownership, of kind of being a good leader and having extreme ownership. I mean, he says it way better himself, and listen to the podcast as well. When that man speaks, you fucking pay attention, He's just like a fucking military precise voice, the way he speaks, such kind of passion, I can't even do it justice, man. The way he so announces his word is really great. But, he talks about, there we go, yeah. The main thing are the law of combat. So it's these four things: cover and move, which essentially is when you have teams, having subdivisional teams, so one makes sure that it backs up the other. So he gives really good examples on how he uses it, when he was fighting in Ramadi, and then he takes it into an example of how it's used in a company setting or a business setting. But I don't think it isn't even business, in life, in your family, in just with communities as well, being able to step up and be a leader is so important. So cover and move, keeping things simple, prioritize and execute. So when you're in a situation where something just needs to be done, just list what the priority is, do it. Something happens, okay, what's the first thing I do? Do it, Decentralized Command, that's a really interesting one as well. Decentralized Command is a great concept where basically you have junior leaders within the team, This is a very interesting contrast to the 48 laws of power, where he mentions something along the lines of, in leadership, by accruing power, you should make sure that other people essentially don't receive recognition for the work they do, and keep them down if you want to accrue power. And this takes a completely different thing, where you need to have, if a junior leader comes up with a better plan, you need to be able to step aside and say, yep, okay, you take that up. This is very interesting, because the 48 Laws of Power is quite dated, and it was written a while ago as well. And while it may be right on certain things, it does lean towards a kind of Machiavellianism. Okay, I'm just going to do this for me, and what benefits me. Whereas with extreme ownership, it's like, no, what benefits the team? It's almost the leader in a sense has to step back. The leader isn't the one who gets the glory and the crown. The leader is the one who steps back and lets the team operate on the ground. Decentralized command, cover, move, execute, and then he goes on to like planning, leading up and down the chain of command, decisive and uncertainty, and then discipline equals freedom. The dichotomy of leadership, and that's a really good point he makes out. Leadership is a dichotomy between discipline and freedom. Being so disciplined and so stuck to the plan and stuck to your vision of doing things as a leader, being so autocratic like I was so many years ago, isn't really going to get anything done. People are just going to be stuck. You're not going to get perfect information. Even better, look at the whole situation in Ukraine and Putin. Putin isn't getting complete information from the ground because his leaders are so, they're unable to be free. They don't want to upset him. They don't want to say anything to him, so he's not getting the right information from his troops on the ground, which is why the Russian war effort isn't doing well. You know, there's no decentralized leadership there. It's all just one megalomaniac, essentially, you know, wanting things to go well without ever getting any real updates because people are afraid of ruffling his ego, and so he's completely disconnected, which is the opposite of Korean ownership. I'm going to just... it's hard to really break it down, though, in some sense, because the way he structures it, it's like all the stuff about like his combat experience, things like that. But anyways, planning is a really good skill as well. It's something I really suck at. When I was at university and I'd write essays, I hate to plan. I just want to go in straight away. Introduction, do this, do that, that. I hate to plan, but my best essays were really when I sat down, looked at my paper and said, okay, how do I plan this? And even still in my job currently, you know, there's not really a plan. We're just told, okay, go out, sell to people, do this, do that, close this contract, get this deal, contact these people, and there's no plan. And it's up to me, actually. There's actually a brilliant point in here when he says, when you have a bad boss, and my boss is okay, but there are features I would have, like, obviously don't correlate to extreme improvement, which is kind of what got me motivated to read this book. He's something like, when you have a bad boss, good. When you have a bad boss, what do? You take leadership. Leadership isn't something that's meant for the leader. Leadership is something meant for every single member of the team. And you have to essentially lead up the chain of command as well as down the chain of command, you know, as well as looking, you know, leading those below you. You have to supply the information up from the ground troops, because the leader, essentially his goal is to step back from what the team is doing and see the whole. Well, the team is doing the tactical plan. The leader has a strategic plan. They have to have that bird's eye view and remain distance. You can't really micromanage. Well, no, it's more flexible. Leadership is such a flexible human thing. It's what we think of as leaders and, like, you know, someone in charge as being so autocratic and stiff and ossified is so not realistic. You know, a leader is kind of a very flexible and a very kind of. It's a very human thing. It's relationship building. Leadership is relationship building. Leadership is knowing how to relate to people, connect with people, understand the people, but also keeping that kind of distance as well. It's not becoming like part of the team. Well, no, you are part of the team, but it's not becoming so enmeshed in the team nobody knows who the leader is. It's knowing how to... It's a beautiful dichotomy, a beautiful balancing act, really, leadership. And that's why he really hammers home here. I'm going to go over this sort of checklist for a plan that I'm going to try and put into place with some things at work as well. So, a leader's checklist for planning should include the following. Analyze the mission. Understand the high headquarters mission, the commander's intent, the end state, the goal. Identify and state your own commander's intent and end state for that specific mission. Where do you want to stop? You know, I think this actually... I'm going to cross over with 48 Laws of Power as well, because that also has some brilliant points with this. There's a point in 48 Laws of Power, it's like, know when to stop. Know when you've achieved victory. Don't go further than the victory, because going further than what you planned for, it often ends in ruin. Often empires overextended, you know, they'll collapse and crumble. Athens, for example, when they overextended and trying to invade Sicily because they wanted more conquest and more glory, that essentially led to the unraveling of the Athenian state when they overstretched their bounds. Identify personnel, assets, resources, and time available. Decentralize the planning process. You've got to have everyone in the plan. Everyone has to know every step of the plan. Everyone needs to be able to communicate and say up to the boss, I don't understand this. Boss, I don't get what this means, you know. Everyone needs to fully know why they're doing this. I think a lot of the things in this book, the case examples he gives, for example, someone's working at a company and they don't know why they're doing something. The higher-ups think they've made this amazing plan, I think the example he gave was like the manufacturing plant, you know, and they have a really complicated system for like commissions earned on manufacturing different kinds of objects. But because it's so complicated, people aren't understanding some months why they're being paid more, some months why they're being paid less. And Jocko gives the case, you know, make it simple, make it so that everyone understands how this commission structure works, and then everyone's sort of on the table and understand, okay, this is how we get paid. Then, you know, the whole company moves in line with that kind of like payment process. So everyone's making the machine parts that are more valuable. And that's one example I think it was an example of keeping it simple, but just generally, making sure that everyone is in the plan, everyone knows why we're doing the plan, everyone isn't sort of on the outskirts wondering why we're doing this. Because it's sometimes, otherwise, if you do that, you'll think that your higher ups, your boss, are just trying to make life light for you, And even my current job, even though I think things are difficult, I know at the end of the day, me, my boss, everyone on the team, we all want to win. We all want to make money. We all want to make money doing the right thing, We all want to make money connecting to businesses, governments, organizations overseas, in the developing world. We all want to win. We don't want to lose. We don't want to lose a competitor. We all want to essentially win. We're all in alignment. There's this lack of communication of why we're doing certain things. Decentralized planning process, and from the decentralization comes to empower key leaders within the team to analyze possible courses of action. The leader can't set all the plan at the moment. There has to be people in the team who are going to be supported by the boss. If they make a choice, they make a call, the boss isn't going to come down like a sack of bricks and say, why the hell did you do that? The boss will be like, okay, you made a call, you made a decision, good. A real leader, and this is contrary to 48 Laws of Power, because they say don't let anyone try and lead or step up from you because they'll usurp it from you. This is a more positive view of things, a less cynical, definitely less cynical, where it says no, let people lead, let people rise up, let people do good and show how they can lead, support their actions, even if it's the right call. If they make a call and do it, support them. Which I think is a much more kind of beneficial mindset to have, especially in today's day and age. I think the 48 Laws of Power is cutthroat and maybe needs to be so, but I do think there's something to this credence as well. Empower key leaders to develop the plan for the selective course of action. Plan for likely contingency through each phase of the operation. Mitigate risks that can be controlled as much as possible. Think about what could be the potential risk to an operation, to a sales strategy, to a plan, to an expedition, Delegate portions of the plan and brief the key junior leaders. Stand back and be the tactical genius. As I said earlier, you've got to have people in these teams as well who will be leaders, who will actually understand the greater vision, understand your vision, so they're able to better communicate to the frontline troops. Continually check and question the plan against emerging information to ensure it still fits the situation. Don't just stick to things, especially even like things like goals as well. I've got to update my goals, to be honest. Like I've kept them. They've been the same since like 2000 since last year. Really, I think I've got to update them really because so many things have happened and changed. I've not really updated the stuff, so I've got to make sure the records still update my current situations. Brief the plan to all participants and supporting assets. Emphasize commander's intent. What is the main goal? What is the thing you're working for? What is the actual outcome of this mission, this sales strategy, this pitch, this presentation you're working on? What's the one thing you want to get out of this? That is the intent. Your commander's intent is so important. And if that's not rock solid, if everyone in the organization, the team, the squad doesn't get that, it's all going to fall on deaf ears and it's going to mutate into one thing or another. Conduct post-operational debrief after the execution. Analyze lessons learned and implement them in future planning. You've always got to debrief. You've always got to say, okay, what did we do wrong? How can we do better? What went well? What didn't went well? This kind of constant analysis, constant questioning. It's so important, really. I think maybe in teams and maybe in your own personal life as well. I definitely think I need to apply this to my life as well. But not to get too long in the tooth here, but I want to just go over one last thing here. The dichotomy of leadership. A good leader must be confident but not cocky, courageous but not foolhardy, competitive but a gracious loser, attentive to details but not obsessed by them, strong but have endurance, a leader and a follower, humble not passive, aggressive not overbearing, quiet not silent, calm but not robotic, logical but not devoid of emotions, close with the troops but not so close that one becomes more important than the other or more important than the good of the team, not so close that they forget who is in charge. Be able to execute extreme ownership while exercising decentralized command. A good leader has nothing to prove, but everything to prove. And this is kind of the almost Zen-like quality of leadership, You have nothing to prove in the sense of, essentially, you have nothing to prove that you are a leader. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to micromanage your whole team. You're there to step back and be the tactical genius. Strategic genius? The one who steps back and essentially sees the whole battle plan. Maybe it is tactical, I think. Or strategic. You've got to be able to step back into the bird's eye view. But you have everything to prove because you have to lead this team. Because you have to govern them through these tough times. You have to sort of be there for them. To relate to them the commander's intent, the real purpose of the mission. To make sure they're all coordinating, firing on full cylinders. And making sure everyone up and down the chain of command. Because there's always going to be someone above you and there's always going to be someone below you. If maybe they're both junior, in a company, then sure, you'll be right at the bottom. But even still, there'll always be someone below you, you know. Even if there's like security guards in your building, whatever, there'll be someone below you in the hierarchy. And you've got to have that good relation up and down the sort of chain of command as well. You have to know how exactly to communicate animation up. Like when your bosses ask you for something, just communicate up. Give them what they want. Give them more than they want. If someone's I think he gives some really good advice. If someone's micromanaging you and wanting this and that and this, all this from you, you almost kill them with kindness. You over-satisfy their desires. You say, okay, boss, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to this. Do you think it's a good plan? What do you think of that? Also, it talks about leading when someone does want to lead, or a leader who might be petty or jealous. He mentions, okay, if you got a leader who's not really sort of helping the younger troops out, you go to the leader, and I've done this as well. So, boss, you know what? How about I give these junior members, a little bit of a debrief? How about I show them the ropes a little bit, and how about without saying it, run it by them. So how about I just show them these things here, and you'll flatter their ego, and you make them think that they've been good, but then you go out and lead. Then you'll go out and actually satisfy that requirement if the leader isn't doing it. All in all, though, this is a brilliant book, and he's written another one. He's written plenty. I'm going to recommend this. I'm going to recommend listening to a podcast as well. It's just got some great stories on there. Just great he interviews people who have served in Vietnam. He reads over history books. He once did a brilliant podcast on Musashi, Miyamoto Musashi, one of the most famous samurai who ever lived. Just some really fucking solid podcasts, and I still listen to Jocko Willink to this day. He's a real source of inspiration. Follow his Instagram page as well. He always posts photos of him being up at 4 a.m. working out, 4:30 a.m. to fucking get some, and that's motivational. But yeah, 100% guys, read Extreme Ownership. It's a brilliant book. If you're leading, if you're going to lead, or if you're a junior member of the company and you want to know what a good leader is like, or if you've had a shitty boss, which I'm sure a lot of people have had, there's a better way to be a leader, and there's a better way to be a follower as well. So 100% against my recommendation. Alright guys, take care. Remember, choose purpose over pleasure.